Hey there, welcome to CNT Collectibles MC. Hope you're doing well. Today I thought we'd take a little closer look at Lars Nootbaar. This is a player that's getting a lot of hype in the preseason, a lot of love fantasy-wise, card-wise, maybe not so much, but they'll tend to go together if he produces in the regular season. Then you could see the ladder start to take off, but I wanted to go a little bit more in-depth with this, with the Cardinals outfielder. He does have an interesting profile, so let's get after it here. Lars Nootbaar, 25 years old, entering his age 25 season, just finished up his age 24 season. Had a mini, I don't know, not necessarily a breakout, but he was on the radar as a pretty serviceable player. In the minors, he was a 35 future value prospect, so that's where the surprise comes from. I don't think people would see that and say, hey, a competent major leaguer, but here we are. He certainly was. He was a 31st ranked prospect on the Cardinals and not ranked in the top 100 really overall for MLB. So he came up a little bit after he expected, and he did just fine here. So he had a 228 average, 14 home runs, 125 weighted runs created, and 2.5 wins in that in the 2022 season, playing just over 100 games, and so that's a pretty good debut for the most part there. So he exceeded expectations right off the bat. I'm going to do a little blind reveal. The answer will be at the end. All right, player A, 231 average, walks and strikeouts, 13%, 21%. 250 batting average on balls in play, weighted on-base average of 335, a 118 weighted runs created, launch angle career of 11.1, exit velocity around 91, home run to fly ball 16%. Player B, same stats. You can see them right here. Tell me who you would rather have at the end. So you can guess who one of them maybe is, but you don't know which one it is. But who's the other player? And this will kind of give us a comp for going forward, perhaps. So there's a pretty large distinction here, and we'll touch on that as we go forward here. So all right, moving along in 2022, 14% walk rate, which is really nice, and managed to limit the strikeouts to 20%. And so you can be a very, very serviceable major league hitter if you're able to take a walk and strike out below 20% or less. And so the players that hang around with strikeout rates around 25, 30% or higher are probably hitting 40 plus home runs. Mainly a one outcome player. I mean, that is power. Unless you're Aaron Judge, who strikes out a little bit more but is able to put the ball in play and find grass at an unusual clip. So those players are few and far between. But for the most part, this is where we're at. 228 average. His expecting batting average was 247. Weighted on-base average, expected weighted on-base average, fairly similar. So the projections aren't expecting a breakout or predicting a breakout or anything like that of that sort. But that's up to him. We'll see how that goes. 125 weighted runs created puts him in near elite territory, which is nice, and 2.5 wins above replacement. Projections for 2023, this is the Fangraphs depth chart. 12% walk rate, 21% strikeout rate, so roughly in line with what he's done. 263 BABIP. In the minors, he was a higher BABIP guy, so we'll see how that translates to the majors. Hasn't translated so far, that 300 BABIP, so 236 average, so creeping up back towards that expected batting average. And weighted OBA 335. So again, in line with what he has. The projections are saying, hey, more of the same for the most part here. There's a few things that he'll need to change to really juice these numbers and get them going in a different direction here. 120 weighted runs created, and again 2.5 wins above replacement. And if you look over the next 3 years, the projections that Zips has for him, really not expecting a breakout or anything like that. So good player, but he's going to have to make a structural change, and this is where we'll look for that here. So his exit velocity, maximum exit velocity, ranks in the 30s of hitters overall, and the players that you can find in that area are Juan Soto and Brian Reynolds. So not Deadpool, Brian Reynolds, not Ryan Reynolds. So that's good company to have here. Now, the trick is the barrel rate at 12%. He's about 75th overall. So the barrel rate is that combination of launch angle and exit velocity. So he can smack the ball once in a while, but doesn't do it on the regular here. So barrel rate in that range, around 75th overall, would put him in pretty good company with Ohtani, Austin Riley, and Jordan Alvarez. Luis Arraez is there as well, and so you're really kind of in between those. You have the guys that with the barrel rate, but they've got a higher launch angle, a higher exit velocity. That's the Ohtani, Riley, and Alvarez. And then Luis Arraez doesn't have much exit velocity or launch angle, and he just hits the ball really well. So he finds himself in between those, and you can see that in the launch angle, he's around 10% or 10 degrees of launch angle, which puts them pretty far down the line. Actually, kind of in line with Ronald Acuna However, Ronald Acuna has a 116 maximum exit velocity, so he's able to line the ball out of the park. So he finds himself in between those guys that can really smoke the ball or the guys that just lift the ball out of the park. And so expected batting average, again, 247. So we could see some increase there. His hard hit percent, decent enough. 46%, his career 43%. So he does hit the ball fairly well here. You can see in a lot of his metrics. But again, he's finding himself in between the guys that can lift the ball out of the park and the guys that can just line it over the fence. And so he'll have to reconcile that one way or another if he wants to get up to that 25, 30 home run level. And then that kind of makes up for the lower batting average to really start get into the conversation of elite tier outfielders. So infield fly ball rate, again, one of those things holding him back. So maybe he's trying to lift it, but he's just getting under the ball a little bit here on a timing issue. 11% infield fly rate. You really want to see that, and you really like to see that in the single digits. Home run to fly ball rate, 16.5%. The big boys are going to be around 20-25%. The elite guys are going to be upwards of 30% or even higher. So again, he's not hitting the ball in the air a ton. His fly ball rate of 38% is a little bit on the low end. He's hitting a lot of ground balls, and we'd like to see those switch into line drives where he's more effective. A lot of pull, so that when he does put the ball out of the park, it's usually going to be to that right field area. So for now, he's launching the ball on pulls, and then maybe he's trying to go the other way on those outside pitches, not trying to yank those oppo or anything like that. So again, he's just kind of in the middle of those elite exit velocity guys and elite launch angle guys. So fly ball percentage, again, 50%, or excuse me, fastball percentage. We already did fly ball. Come on now, fastball percentage. Pitchers aren't afraid to attack him because basically what they need to do is just stay away from the inside of the plate where he's just going to pull it out of the park. That's where his power seems to lie. And then within the zone, they will mix it up with some changeups and sliders, and that's where they'll get him to strike out. Again, 20% rate, he does strike out, but he does have some pretty nice plate presence because he can take a walk at that 14% clip, and so we'll see that here. Outside swing percentage ranks in the top 15 overall, that 23%. So you'll find him with players like Taylor Ward, J.P. Crawford. The elite guys, the best is Juan Soto, right around 20%, and so he has a good handle on the zone, but contact in the zone he can get fooled just a little bit here. So when we look at zone contact, he drops down to just outside the top 100 about 83% of the time. He's making contact on balls in the zone here, and so there's a little bit of he doesn't swing it a whole lot, but he does get fooled within the zone on the called strikes, and so you get 20% of the time. You have his strikeouts, they're getting called on him, so he'll have to be perhaps a little more aggressive or recognize the off-speed pitches. But again, pitchers aren't afraid just to attack him with the fastball, but they're going to come in a little bit away because you go inside on him. That's where he becomes a little more deadly, and you can see that on the heat map here. So if you can stay kind of away just a little bit, and this is where most of the pitchers are, then this is where you can avoid a lot of damage with Lars Nootbaar. So you come inside again, he'll yank it out of the park here. So stay away, throw some fastballs, and he's not going to swing it too much out of the zone. So you do need to keep it within the zone. But if you mix the speeds up, perhaps this is where you can see some improvement when he starts to recognize different pitches and he can really start to lay into it. He's only played a year really, so we're not saying that he's capped or anything like that, but he'll have to recognize those pitches inside the zone and then start to lift some of those balls to really take that next step. So interestingly enough, versus lefties, he's a lefty. And against lefties, he hit 273, struggled against righties, which is kind of opposite of what you would think. But he does see a lot of changeups. Righty that's throwing a changeup to him will run away from him, and that's where he's susceptible to an extent here. So on the road against lefties, he's hitting 300. So should be in theory easier for him to pick up on right-handers, and perhaps you can see some improvement there and really make some strides. If he does get off to a slow start, July and August are kind of his hottest months here, so buying now may not be the right move, but if he gets off to a slow start, then maybe he has the opportunity to get going as the summer heats up, he'll heat up as well. So that Cardinals outfield is pretty crowded, so he's going to have to come out to a pretty scorching start, or a pretty relatively good start, if he wants to even have a chance to play for the team in July and August. And so Baseball Savant distills all this information fairly nicely. Average exit velocity, maximum exit velocity, certainly up there just a bit. He's no slouch. Hard hit percentage, Again, in the 80th percentile weighted on base average, so he does have a really nice bat. Again, we're looking for more of a launch angle because he does pull the ball out of the park, but it's going to have to be of the line drive fashion for the most part here. Doesn't chase the ball out of the zone as we've seen here. He can take a walk, he can barrel up just fine, and his defense is pretty nice too, and that's what's going to keep him in the lineup if he does come out off to a slow start here. Outs above average, and his arm strength can gun hitters down. So we understand that Lars is pretty metal here. So how does he stack up with some of the all-time greats? Lars just getting started here on a little bit of a late trek. If we compared him to some of the big-time Hall of Famers, it's going to be ugly. So let's pick a couple guys that maybe he are more of a realistic track here. So Andre Dawson, the Hawk. If you look at his numbers, he had a couple of really nice seasons. He had a 7-win season, but then there was a lot of 3s and 4s, and then a lot of compiling 3s and 4s. And so, I think if it was revisited today with modern metrics, Andre Dawson might be outside looking in. So, but I like the Hawks. I'm glad he's in there. But he got off to a nice start at a young age, and just steady trajectory, started to fall off in his late 20s and started to grind it out. Let's compare him to Harold Baines, who many people would say maybe not a Hall of Famer. So a lot gentler trajectory here, and he's not even on that track. And so for the long term, I'm not terribly interested in Lars Nootbaar unless there is that change in hitting approach where we're able to lift the ball just a little bit here. Got to get you can't have the low average with 20 home runs. Sorry, you got to pick one or the other here. So increase the home runs or increase the average. We'll see which way he goes on that one. So for those reasons, it's not a player that I'm terribly interested in fantasy drafts for the most part. He's going as the 40th outfielder overall. He ranks kind of closer to 30, so there's some value to be had if you're able to get him in that 35 to 40 area. His cards are pretty cheap, and I think they stay cheap. There'll be flashes here and there. He'll have a hot streak where people can get kind of interested in, but for the longer term, I'm just not gonna. If I pull some of his stuff, great. I'm not gonna go out of my way to acquire a lot of his high end things here. But again, for fantasy purposes this year, I think there's an interesting play to be made. Again, if he drops down to outfielder 40 or something like that. So, all right, we had a blind reveal up front, and we had a couple of players that were fairly similar. The one distinction there between the two players was the launch angle, the walks and strikeouts. Similar-ish batting average, similar-ish weighted runs created. Player A had a little bit of an advantage, and the weighted on-base average, they're fairly same. So player A is Lars Nootbaar. Player B, Christian Walker. So really the biggest difference between the two, because they have similar profiles at the plate, is that launch angle. Christian Walker has a 17-degree launch angle on average, and so that's going to help him with putting the ball out of the park. He had 36 home runs last year. So if Lars Nootbaar is able to get under the ball and lift it just a little bit, could he become Christian Walker type? And then I think the 240 average would be a lot more palatable if he's hitting 30 home runs. So it'll be interesting. We'll have to see what he does with it, but that's what I got for you today. I appreciate you watching. Have a great rest of the day, and we'll talk to you later.